Hopefully everyone can hear me. Very pleased to be here in Barcelona in this after lunch slot. Also very privileged to be joined by three exceptional experts on a very interesting question of how to scale DLT infrastructure. It's a privilege to be here, but we're also very fortunate to talk about a system-wide topic. Many of the panels earlier have already kind of contributed to aspects of this, but we'll be taking a holistic view at this question of how to scale DLT infrastructure and what is needed from industry participants. A little bit about me. So I'm Coco Chen from the Association for Financial Markets in Europe. I work very closely with large wholesale financial institutions on how they adopt new technologies. So in some ways, I'm the Tradis of TradFi here, but I will be trying to be a voice of optimism, and we'll look to be solutions-oriented today. So maybe just looking at the panelists, a first question, starting with Dan, is can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what your vision for scaling is? We heard about the 1.4 million transactions per second already. Clearly a lot to learn from you.
Thank you. My name is Dan Hughes. Maybe some of you were here earlier when I was on the stage again. I'm the founder of Radix, which is a layer one decentralized ledger technology protocol. It's probably the oldest project in the crypto space with the youngest actual mainnet chain. My reason for that is we spent over a decade researching the difficult problem of how do you scale a layer one protocol so that it can handle the traffic of 10 billion users and IoT, AI, VR, and all those things. And the result of our research over that time period resulted in a network that is able to, as Coco said, scale to millions of transactions per second in a decentralized way, in a secure way, with a refined user experience and a much more efficient developer experience.
And what's your vision for end-state DLT infrastructure?
I think there's such a huge opportunity for DLTs to revolutionize so many aspects of industry and daily life. That's part of the reason why I spent so long researching how do you scale these technologies. I think that the scalability of a protocol is the enabler of that change, but as we'll find on this panel, scale is more than just the technological aspect, right? There's all of the social, economic scalability that you also need to bring the potential to life.
Absolutely, and I think turning to the financial market participants on the panel, I think we all know that, as Dan said, DLT promises a lot of great things: efficiencies, cost and risk reduction, transparency, accessibility. But to really get to those benefits, we need scale. So, Brenner, can you tell us a little bit about what ING is doing to contribute to scale and what ING's vision is for scaling?
Yeah, thanks, Coco. So first of all, I think it's important to mention that scale collaboration is key, or else all of these theories that we'll see on white paper for DLT and blockchain, they won't come to fruition, and ING is taking a very large stance in terms of how we collaborate with industry to get to solutions that matter, make sense, and ultimately provide value to ourselves and end clients. Now, in the end of the day, a bank's job is quite simple, right? Like, we help clients get access to funds, we help them transfer funds, we work with large-scale financial securities and money. And if we want to bring that on chain, that's not an overnight process. Now, scale to me means no liquidity fragmentation. It means that assets and liabilities can live within the same ledger, the same ecosystem, and can be freely transferable, whilst also maintaining things such as security, privacy, and some sensical solutions that still remain, to be the reason why customers trust ING as a bank, and trust is key. If you lose trust, you don't have almost anything with an end user. What we see in terms of the end state of scalability is indeed, like I had mentioned, taking money, whether that is central bank, commercial bank, or other forms of money and assets, and finding a solution that really works, and bringing the market together to work on a beneficial use case to make it a reality.
Thanks, Brenner. And turning to Coty, we hear a lot about the exciting initiatives that Santander is participating in. Can you tell us a bit more, and also how they pave the path towards scaling?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me today. It's a pleasure to be here with these great panelists. So Santander placed its bets on blockchain technology 8 years ago when we founded our blockchain lab. Now it's called the Center of Excellence. Since then, we've pioneered different initiatives, internal ones, consortium-driven, and our digital assets program is quite extensive, working on digital securities, digital collateral mobility, different forms of liquidity optimization, and we are following and participating in several digital cash initiatives. An example of that is Finality, which also ING is participating on that. Finality is building peer-to-peer wholesale payment system. It's already live, testing the sterling pound together with the Bank of England. That it's it's kind of proving that this system works in order to go for massive production. I think that Brenner is going to give more details on this, but we are also participating in Latin America, where we have a strong market with the Central Bank of Brazil in their DREX project. They are creating a wholesale CBDC, and on top of that, tokenized deposits. That's just another example of collaboration where central bank and other different banks and private sector companies are building together a network and infrastructure for all types of tokenized assets. There are many other examples of these types of projects, but the thing is that it looks like future is going to be multi-chain, so we need to work all together on the interoperability so we can transfer efficiency, messages, and assets. We are also working on the crypto space. That's something more recent. We are working on all the foundational elements to offer safely crypto to our clients. While we are already testing in some markets, we are live in Switzerland for our private banking clients, and soon we'll be in Brazil and in other markets. And our vision in Santander, we think that in the future, all forms of value are going to be digital. And probably there's going to be a kind of regulated DeFi. So that's why we are, since 2016, working on exploring, on researching and testing, and now some projects that are finally real.
Thank you so much, Coty. And I think I'm hearing a lot of commonalities among your visions, including potentially a consolidated tech stack, promoting investor accessibility, issuance of central bank currency on asset chains, a lot of different topics there that actually you share a lot of shared interest among them. And just kind of thinking a little bit about the how do we get there? I know these are not small topics in and of themselves. What are some concrete actions and solutions that you would encourage the industry to explore? Brenner?
Yeah, I can start with that. I think first and foremost, and I echo Coty in saying that ING for almost a decade now has also been in the R&D lab and have been collaborating with many different chains and trying to build something that is future-proof and excellent. And right now, I think in terms of what we need to do is we need to start finding business case, and we need to start embedding some of this logic and some of this value closer to our business and handle it with the center of excellence that knows their traditional business. So, for instance, I come from a traditional capital markets background, helping clients issue bonds. Those bonds then need to be eligible collateral that can be posted to receive loans for short-term financing reasons. And right now there are solutions in the market today in which there is, private blockchains that provide solutions in which you can instantly settle certain assets. You can therefore immediately reduce costs, you can reduce settlement time, you can reduce counterparty risk. And this is the type of solution that we might not feel is the end state, but at least is providing business value. Now, I'll let you in on a not so secret. Banks have a huge digitization agenda. I mean, we are using systems that are sometimes older than maybe some people in this room. There is a lot of digitization desire, and if you want to get into certain priority lists, you need to provide certain value to clients, and it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but it needs to be more near term than maybe some of the solutions we're suggesting. So I recommend to everybody who is here and is a practitioner to really think about business case now while building towards an end state.
I think that's a very pragmatic approach, if I may, by identifying those discrete use cases and starting the scaling process on that basis. Would you agree with that, Dan? I know that we spoke a little bit about advancements on the tech side of things. Does that sort of, the market considerations that Brenner just outlined, do they sort of align with your tech enablement and development trajectory?
Yeah, I think like banks and large financial institutions have a lot of responsibility, right? And so even if there is a technology available to them today that can provide the scale that they need and the security and all of those things, it would be irresponsible of them to just switch to that date tomorrow, right? So Brenner's approach of we trial things out, we deploy private networks, which some people have a lot of hesitation about applauding those kind of efforts, but I think that if you're a realist about the situation and the responsibilities that banks have across the entirety of their client base, it would be irresponsible to just go gung-ho into a public network, right? And there are certain things as an organization that maybe you don't want to share or you can't share for legal reasons. So I made a presentation back in 2013, maybe 2014, where one of the slides was essentially you have this public network in the middle, then you have all these satellite private deployments of blockchains that overlap a little with the public network, right? So you can essentially get the benefits of both worlds, where you can keep the stuff private that you need to keep private and be conservative with that. In the areas where it makes sense for you as an organization, such as a financial organization, you can overlap a little bit with the public network where that provides value to your clients and your customers. So I think Brenner's bang on.
I think absolutely. I think we find that particularly in my work around working with sovereign and supranational debt issuers to try to encourage them to experiment with the use of DLT. Learning by doing is a huge first step, and the same goes for the investor community as well. For custodians as well, really getting the whole ecosystem on board is extremely important. And a first step to that is really kind of allowing them to experiment with the technology, right? They don't need to kind of take any actions at this point, but actually that familiarity is really important.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal is that everything's on a public blockchain, right? But the realist is it can't all be on a public blockchain. So you will always have this compromise between the two.
Yeah. And I think just kind of speaking about bringing more players and more of the rest of the ecosystem on-chain, we know that the investor community is extremely important. The other sorts of financial market infrastructures are extremely important from the perspective of financial institutions. We know that maybe standardization and interoperability have a role to play in that. Coty, just wondering if you could speak to your experience on that.
Yeah, so I think that first of all, when I think about the scaling, I think of a tokenized economy. So that means that current traditional financial system must move to DLT, right? And public networks are great for some use cases, but there are specific use cases that we need high degree of privacy that, in my opinion, it's something that it's not really solved today. So I would start talking about privacy. Interoperability is key, but I think that in privacy we have a huge elephant in the room. And why I'm saying this, I've already mentioned the Drex project in Brazil, where they are building a wholesale CBDC for interbank settlement. On top of that, commercial banks are going to issue tokenize deposits and other instruments, and they will distribute to the citizens. And the project had a specific plan where they were going to test different privacy solutions. They tested 3 different ones. I'm not going to say it, but I don't want to talk and say bad things about solutions. It's public, so it's, you can Google it. But they tested them, and the result was not satisfactory. So it didn't meet the requirements. Because when you add these privacy solutions, you add complexity, and that means that it goes slower, right? So what has happened that, well, the project has been delayed, and they will need to continue testing more privacy solutions. So for me, that's key. Blockchain was designed to be transparent, to be public, and we are trying to use it for something else. And when you start designing these networks, Bank A says that he doesn't want Bank B to know that he's transacting with Bank C. So it's not only the payload of that transaction. If I'm sending 1 million or 2 million, that's easy to to encrypt. It's that they don't want that you know that we are talking. So that's that level of privacy, and that's not easy to solve. That's one thing. The other thing, interoperability. I already said that I see that the future is going to be multi-chain. We are working in several projects where we are envisioning a unified shared layer, but there are hundreds of different projects working in parallel in different chains, different protocols. So we have to build secure bridges between them. I mean, if not, you are creating a siloed infrastructure. So there's privacy, there's interoperability, and then standards. I mean, we need a way to communicate in the same language, just as we've got ISO 222 in Swift. So something like that. And there's a long way to get there. And we are doing tons of tests. There's a lot of research and development, but there's not like the factory to produce tokenized assets. In Spanish, I would say the churrera. So for the Spanish people to understand me, to create the churros, no, like that, no. And it's like we are taking a lot of time to do so, but it's because, and I said this on the last European Blockchain Convention, because in the financial industry, this is like changing the engine of an aircraft while it's flying 30,000 feet, because it has to be still compatible with the legacy systems. So it's going to take a while, and well, but hopefully this collaboration, public, private companies, different consortium is going to help.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something which is really important to the financial industry, which is that kind of in the interim, there's a lot of investment and a lot of costs of duplication that actually need to go into moving on-chain, which need to be justified and need to be borne by either by the industry as a whole, or potentially there are public incentives that are needed. You know, if we're all working towards something that's 10 times or 100 times better, does the public sector, for example, have a role to play in that? So a lot of kind of different nudges and different levers that need to be pulled for the whole kind of for all of us to pursue those collective aims. And maybe just kind of going back to something you said, Coty, about the different initiatives around the world to look at, potentially establishing a global layer one, a unified ledger. Dan, just turning to you, what are your thoughts on that? Is it realistic? Is it also kind of projecting the current model of a centralized financial system onto something that is, by definition, decentralized or distributed?
I'm very much in the camp of, at the moment, I think there's a lot of fragmented technology, there's a lot of protocols, there's a lot of, then you get kind of use case issues like fractured liquidity and all of these kind of issues that put friction in front of any use cases that you want to roll out to clients and customers, right? And I'm very much of the camp of that. I think there will be, over the medium to long term, once it's been provably demonstrated that there are protocols that can scale to the likes of Radix and beyond that, that I think there will be at some point in the future a consolidation of protocols, right? Because if you have protocols that can scale essentially unlimited, that can provide levels of decentralization and security that are needed, that everybody is satisfied with, and it is enough to mitigate risk, why would you need other protocols that can't achieve that, right? And I think the main problem has been, especially for large industries such as the banking and finance industry, is that there isn't been a technology that can provide those three things in a sufficient way for them to even aggressively move forward if they wanted to, right? Because I think probably the question that gets asked in the blockchain labs in these various institutions is, okay, but what happens if we launch this and it really gets traction? How does this scale, right? So I do think that over time you will have a unification of protocols that will solve a lot of the issues around liquidity, and interoperability will still be needed, but it won't be as complex a problem as it is right now. Bridges and cross-chain swaps and all these things, they are very complex. They have a very dynamic security service, and they're very difficult to get right.
Yeah, because the current financial system is complex, right? So moving towards a financial system on-chain is a complex process.
You're putting complexity on top of complexity on top of complexity.
The spaghetti mess problem.
That always ends badly, right? So.
But I think we do have a number of those visions that you mentioned in mind, and that's what we're all kind of working collectively towards. Brenner, maybe just kind of coming to you, I think we mentioned that, potentially having the same tech stack, moving towards a blockchain-based financial markets can actually help overcome some of the liquidity challenges that we have in the current system, which is, actually has a lot of fragmented liquidity pools, right? Just wondering if there's kind of any asset classes or any specific use cases that you want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into as to, how we can get there, or good examples even.
Yeah, so liquidity is fragmented, for sure. If we move completely on chain right now, it might become a little more fragmented, but that's innovation, right? It's a hockey stick growth. So in order to transfer to a new future, you might have to take a step back to then take 2 steps forward. So if you really want to globalize liquidity, that needs to be on ledgers that are more distributed than they are right now. Living in silos, we won't be able to globalize liquidity that well. So I really stay away from predictions because I'm mostly wrong, but maybe Daniel or Coty are right. But I'll tell you what maybe my 5-year plan is in order to get this right. So collateral markets, trading, issuing of securities is something that I know decently well from a traditional financial markets background. I really do not know smart contract coding so well, so I'll let them tell you how you can do cross-chain bridges and swaps. But what I will say is, when I'm talking to an investor and they want to buy an asset, rarely will they ask me, well, what tech stack is that asset being delivered on? It's more like, what is the coupon? Is it safe? Can I get into it and out of it as I want and when I please? Can I manage credit risk and market risk? So what I will do is I will do my best to explain to them in financial terms what is better about this asset than was before. But in order to get the actual benefits of said, asset origination or asset trading, we first need the smarter people on the left and right of me who are building incredible things in terms of deploying chains that work and make sense for these industries. So you will start to see a natural flywheel. People migrate to things that are cheaper, faster, and better, and this will happen. And another thing that I think is quite important with what the AFME is doing in general, regulators need to be up to speed. Industry needs to understand the direction that we are going. There's no forks in the road anymore. So collaborating with people who all have similar but yet slightly different professionalisms is so key. And when these assets are moving more freely, more globally, and 24/7, the work will speak for itself and people will naturally migrate.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned a new benefit, which we hadn't really touched on before, which is around programmability. And it's a huge benefit. I see Coty nodding her head for investors as well, for asset servicing, bypassing and streamlining a lot of the manual reconciliation and processes that take place currently. Is that something you can speak to a little bit about, just in terms of how, I think there's a lot of recognition, even from the investor side, that this is ultimately going to reduce cost for them. But how do we get there? Is there what are the steps,
Yeah, sure. So I think that when we talk about programmability, an important piece of that is that atomic delivery versus payment, or atomic payment versus payment. So for that to happen, that's why interoperability, it's important. I mean, we've already tested, for example, in Finality, connecting HQLAX and Finality, which are different protocols, different assets, and we managed to do that swap in an atomic way. So one asset is not transferred if the other one is not, right? So that's part of, well, I think it's one of the most important pieces of that programmability, a part of, I mean, that you're creating digital programmable assets. So the asset itself, it's a computer program, and you can add there whatever behavior that you want. So, I mean, from here to the moon, you can imagine, right? But that's why it's important that they all talk the same language, so that standards, because if not, you end up with the same thing that we have right now, a complex infrastructure.
Absolutely. I think we're looking at an extremely powerful and transformative future, right? And whether that's 5 to 10 years or 15 years or 25 years, as one of your colleagues said earlier, Coty, I think we're all working towards that future. And maybe just my last question to the panel, as a kind of final quick fire round of, just pretend you're a DLT doctor right now, and you're looking to sort of assign and give prescriptions to the system. What is the one remedy you would give?
I think the two main things, I'm going to give two. Aside from the tech, right? So forget the tech. Let's assume that there are scalable platforms that are secure. It is definitely collaboration and education.
Collaboration, education.
You need people who can educate other people who aren't in the same lane as them, so that they can understand the business use cases, the business problems, and the business solutions. And then we can all collaborate to build those solutions that everybody is now educated upon.
Great. Brenner?
Yeah, I would say if I was a doctor and someone was coming with their aches and pains of trying to trial DLT, I would say just go. Do something. There's a lot of amazing solutions out there. There are a lot of builders who are building things that are fit for purpose, and you can't progress if you don't try. So originate assets, bring money onto infrastructures that you feel are the right ones for the future, but just try it.
Just try it.
Just try
Coty,
it.
just try it.
So I would add to collaboration, public-private, meaning public networks sharing with private permissioned, because there's a lot of innovation going on the public chains, but sometimes that's not transmitted to the private use cases, like in the financial sector. And public-private in the sense of public sector, central banks, governments, and private sector as well. And we see there a great example of collaboration with the recently launched Agora project, which is it's formed by 7 central banks and 41 financial institutions.
I think the good news for all of us is that a lot of that is in train already, right? And not least kind of thanks to all the work that people in this room are doing. So I think we're on a great path. And just with that, I wanted to thank the panelists. Can we have a round of applause for them?
Thank you.